Hey Brad, how you
Hi,
doing?
hi, Starr. How's it going?
Welcome to EdPerspectives, first of 2015. Today we're going to be talking about time management, more or less the kinds of things that educators are sort of forced to do versus what they really want to do. So I'm not really sure it's time management. I don't know what you call it, but time is a big issue in education, how we spend it, how we'd like to spend it. As a teacher, a lot of stuff is sort of forced upon us, and we have plans and things are all exciting and we build up a momentum, and then we get either an email or something the morning of, and it's like, oh, I know you had a plan, but you're going to have to do this instead. And I think that as a teacher, this is one of the greatest frustrations and challenges. So my question to you, Brad, is first of all, how often do you guys get information and then have to disseminate it to us, you as an administrator? I imagine you get the curveball as much as we do. I don't think you guys do it to us on purpose. So I'd like to understand a little bit more about the process that goes on for administrators, where you'd like to spend your time and then where you have to spend it.
Yeah, I mean, and you bring up emails and things. It's funny, if you're out for a day or two, how the emails pile up, and then you have to sift through them and determine, what's important, what can wait, and things along those lines. And that definitely takes up a lot of time, but it's very important. It's how we communicate. I always wonder, 20, 25 years ago, what teachers and administrators did without email. Must have been
Inter-office mail.
Yeah, well, it must have been cut down drastically. But anyway, it's just looking at one specific example. Take for example the park testing. It's something that New Jersey and 12 other states are doing around the country, beginning in March. Actually, some states have already started park testing, but it's something that we receive, weekly or twice a month. Broadcast memos from the state, and these memos typically come from the commissioner or assistant commissioner or the technology person from the state, relaying information to us about how park is going to unfold. And often these memos are many pages long, or they're hyperlinked all over the place, so we have to sift through that information. Many times it's our superintendent, sometimes it's me, depending on what it is, sometimes it's somebody else. And then we have to, all right, now what do the teachers need to know? What do we need to talk about at the next faculty meeting or team meeting, or can we push it out some other way? And so that, it does take up a lot of time. And whether you agree with it or not, you have to go through it and do it, and to the best of your ability. And at the end of the day, it's trying to communicate that information, disseminate the information the best way you can to help kids be successful. And sometimes it's incredibly frustrating. I'd say more often than not, but at the end of the day, that's what it is. So you deal with it.
Well, I have a question about that. I'm glad you started with testing as one of the things that's sort of the most frustrating time waster, because as a teacher, we do a lot of pilot testing. I know my school gets money for it, so sometimes I could be in the middle of something important and they'll tell me for the next 2 days you're going to be doing this, and it has absolutely no bearing on what I'm doing. I don't even get the results of what's going on, so it's not even going to help me in any way, shape, or form. It's really hard to get the students to buy in to even get an accurate read for this pilot. I know they're looking for bodies, but I don't know how good idea it is to go with seniors who understand that they're not really invested in the outcome of whatever these pilot tests do. So what I was wondering is, what kind of accountability does the state put on an administrator to do these kinds of situations? You talked about Park, and you talked about these emails they sent out, and then you guys have to figure out what's important enough to tell us and what you can leave out. But who's watching you, and what are the repercussions if you don't do that?
Well, I mean, it's just like anything else. I mean, whether it's the teacher observation component, or the park testing, or our harassment, intimidation, and bullying law, there are certain procedures that you need to follow. And if you don't, you understand as an administrator that there will be consequences. whether it's you lose your certification or things along those lines. So you really have to take it seriously, understand what is important, and communicate that information. And that's the bottom line. So you go through training as an administrator, typically over the summer. But with those broadcast memos, they do make it very clear, what it is. I've never been threatened by anybody. I mean, the bottom line is you have to do your job and take
Gotcha.
that seriously. So, but on your end, Starr, looking at once that information is communicated to yourself and your colleagues, what's your take on it? How do you make sense of it, and how does that get communicated to the students?
Well, I think that this is the greatest challenge because if you don't get the teachers to buy in, it's even harder to get the students to buy in. Kids are tremendous reads on character and on everything. So if they could tell you're not invested, it's like a little act you have to do. But as a teacher, it's really hard to invest yourself in something that you really don't agree with. In particular, because we're a 6 to 12 school, for example, when the New York State middle school tests start to happen in March and April, my principal will ask us to go on field trips on the days that they're happening so that we could minimize sound and other passing and try to make the situations, because they'll have all the kids holed up in classrooms until even the double time kids are finished. So they're going to be trapped in a room for likely up to 4 hours sometimes, and they're not allowed to have books or anything in there. And being a proctor of one of those exams is torture, to be honest with you. It's a torturous experience, and it's not a good way to really. I don't know. To me, I think it comes down to philosophy. The bottom line is the way we spend our time in the classroom shows what we value in the classroom. So if I'm forced to spend my time in the classroom just preparing for tests and just proctoring tests and doing those things, it sends the wrong message to my students about what's important in education. So the challenge, I think, for administrators working with us, and I'm definitely more mouthy than most teachers probably are. I'll toe the line when I have to, but I'm going to push back, especially with the pilot testing, because certain classes I really can't afford. I can't afford to lose class time. I'm already losing too much class time. But something like Park or something like the state exams in New York that we also can't get around, the one thing that's good about it is there's a fixed schedule. Things don't likely just come up. The things that come up are these pilot tests, or for example, I just found out on Thursday I'm going to be going to a meeting in Brooklyn instead of going to school. Now I have things planned for next week, and on Thursday I have kids presenting. So I go into like problem-solving mode. So I say to my students, hey guys, I'm not going to be in school on Thursday, but you're still going to do what you're supposed to do. We're going to videotape it. I'm going to look at it afterwards, but you're not going to miss a day of classes because I'm being sent away and I'm just learning. And I actually got advance notice this time. I mean, I knew a week in advance. Usually it's like I get the email the night before and I don't have time to plan anything. And I find that tremendously frustrating. So, I mean, I guess that's why I asked how much notice you guys get, because the biggest frustrating thing for me as a teacher is the lack of notice that I get and how quickly I need to adjust. And then more importantly, how quickly I need to communicate that information to my students so that their learning isn't disrupted.
Typically from the state of New Jersey, we receive information in a timely fashion, and if it's important enough, we push it out in a timely fashion. We never want to surprise anybody or have people feel the way you do. I think it's important that that at the end of the day, you realize that teaching the kids and being there with your students is the most important thing. So, that brings up one of the next subtopics we wanted to discuss here today, and that's what you really want to be doing with your time if you had your druthers. And I commented on the Google Docs sheet that we created prior to this EdPerspectives episode to prepare for this. I'm in classrooms a lot, but I wish I was in classrooms more. But again, you get caught up in things that you have to deal with. sometimes that you don't want to deal with, but you deal with it. And whether it's park testing or writing up observations or dealing. We have an age harassment, intimidation, and bullying law, and there's a lot of paperwork once an incident comes to our level, and so it takes up a lot of time. And there's a million other things, but so you try to think outside the box, be creative, and that's why I always fall back on trying to tell our school story, focus on the positive, use Twitter, use my smartphone, my iPhone as a way to tell our school story and keep things in perspective, and that gets me excited. I wish I could do it more. I do it enough, but I'd like to do it more and have those conversations with teachers informally about what's going on. Have conversations with students about what's going on in class. Again, we do that as much as we can, but there's always room for improvement. So those are things that I struggle with balance-wise. How about you, Starr?
To be honest with you, I wish my administrators would come in more. There are some amazing things happening in my classroom. I have some phenomenal students who really surprise me all the time, and they should get the recognition they deserve. And it just doesn't happen. If it were up to me, I wish I had more time to spend more one-on-one time with my kids so that I could give every single kid exactly what they need. And I think the really frustrating thing for me is that I really do hold myself to this ridiculous standard of forcing as much into a day as possible. So I teach my AP Lit class period 3, which is right before lunch, and most of my AP Lit kids end up staying period 4 through lunch because they're so engaged in what's going on that they just stay and keep working, and I give up my lunch to help them. And it's also a great opportunity for me to get to know them better and answer their questions, and it's a lot more informal, and I appreciate that. I'd also like the time to work with my colleagues a little bit more. I do teach a class with 2 colleagues, 7th period, and every Wednesday the 3 of us meet together to kind of collaborate on what we're doing in the space, and I would love more time just to collaborate on planning, going over student work, coming up with exemplars, trying to communicate with kids in a better fashion. Even my communication with parents, I'd like more time for, because often when it's convenient for me to reach out to parents, it's not convenient for parents because I could make phone calls at 7 o'clock in the morning, but I highly doubt that that's when parents want to be contacted. And I don't stay after school to make those phone calls because I have to come home to be a mom. So, I have a very finite amount of time during the school day to do so many different things that kind of have to get done, like you were saying. And really, I would like to teach. I would like to be with my students. I would like to spend my time immersed in the work, because that's what I love to do. But as you suggested, being an administrator, there are just other things that come up. Like I get pulled out of class for a meeting, or I have to cover a class on a period that I was going to be doing conferences with kids. And it's crappy, like maybe 3rd period they come on the announcements and they're like, nobody can stay up for lunch today. And then they lose a lunch period also because of something else that's going on. And it's heartbreaking. It's heartbreaking when you have kids who are engaged, who want that time, and you're only one person and there's really only so much you can do. So it's definitely something that I think we need to work on better, working smarter and not working harder to really get everything that we need in the school day and prioritize the things that matter most.
I'm glad you brought up the time that you spend with your colleagues. I think that's really important in terms of how we spend our time as educators, and that's a main focus that we have in our district this year. Our superintendent made it very clear at the kickoff ceremony or what have you, whatever you want to call it, at the beginning of the school year, where she said it's the year of you, and really focusing on you as an educator. We brought back our PLCs, even though we've had them informally for years. We kind of gotten away from them over the last couple of years due to many of the state mandates and what have you. But getting back to PLCs, working with your colleagues, using faculty meeting time not to go over agenda items, but to share best practices and help each other out. We've had some great faculty meetings this year where staff members are teaching each other how to use certain tools in the classroom and learning how to read and write across the curriculum and things along those lines, and using in-service days as a meaningful way to move forward as an educator, to get better, because we can always get better. Status quo is never an option. And just we're having an in-service day coming up here on the 19th, Martin Luther King Day, and we're going to
Wow,
have.
you guys don't get the day off?
No, we have an in-service day. It depends what district you're in. Some years we have it off. Some years we don't. This year, for whatever reason, the calendar is what it is, and we're in. Well, at least the staff members are, and so we have an in-service day, and in the morning our colleagues are going to be running sessions. It's kind of like an ed conference in our own backyard. And then in the afternoon we're going to have time they're going to have time to make sense of what they learned in the morning, work on their PLCs. So it's all about time, and I'm glad you brought that up. So Starr, as we wind down here, is there one takeaway or maybe one thing that moving forward as it relates to how you spend your time, you're going to really try to focus on in 2015?
I think just being really intentional with the time that I have. There is a certain level of acceptance that a lot of it is outside of my control, which I would be lying if I said didn't suck. But the bottom line is there really is a lot of time that I do have, and really making the most of that time, not wasting it away. I really make myself available to my kids outside of school quite a lot, so that alleviates some of the pressure of finishing everything during the school day. And that's one of the amazing things about social media, getting the kids on Twitter, getting the kids on Voxer, and just talking to them in that capacity well beyond the school day. And that's something that I'm going to be focusing on too, really teaching the kids to self-advocate so that I'm not the only person they can talk to, but they could also talk to their peers and other teachers and people who are available to them, that I'm not the only expert who can give them the advice that they need. So that's something that I'm going to be working on with time. What about you?
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. Everything, it needs to be intentional. You're right. If you're not doing it for a reason, then why are you doing it? So I think whether it's for yourself, developing yourself professionally, or teaching a lesson, and everything needs to be intentional. You have to be doing it for a reason. And so that's it for this episode 7 of Ed Perspectives. Starr and I are going to be discussing educational issues from both sides of the aisle, the teaching perspective and the administrative perspective, even though I would hope we're always working together. But there are always many viewpoints when it comes to education. So I thank you for joining us here on Ed Perspectives. We will be blasting this episode out on our YouTube channel and through Starr's blog and through our Twitter feeds and every other social media feed you can think of over the next days and weeks. And please, if you're ever interested in joining us as a guest on Ed Perspectives, please reach out to Starr or myself. We are looking to definitely bring in more voices, more perspectives as we go through the 2015 calendar year. So for Starr Sackstein, I'm Brad Currie. Thank you for joining us. Have a great day. Bye-bye.